Bueno, yo creo que empezamos ya, si os parece, pasados los 3 minutos de cortesía. Buenos días, bienvenidos al seminario de hoy, de los seminarios del Instituto de Políticas y Bienes Públicos. En primer lugar, disculpar a Marta Fraile, que es la habitual presentadora de los seminarios, porque hoy no podía asistir. Y entonces me toca a mí hacer la presentación, pero es un gusto. Tenemos hoy a Cecilia García Chávez, que es una joven promesa. Está en su último año del doctorado y es un caso interesante de cómo las sociedades se adaptan a las nuevas demandas, porque ella está haciendo un doctorado industrial, también los hay en España, en el Instituto de Investigación sobre Sistemas e Innovación de la Fraunhofer ISI en Alemania, la sociedad Fraunhofer, y haciendo el doctorado en la Universidad de Lund, en Suecia, en un centro de investigación que se llama Cited, también sobre innovación. Y bueno, es un caso interesante y nos va a presentar hasta qué punto las redes de colaboración en la investigación importan a la hora de las políticas de atracción de talento. Creo que además ella representa uno de estos casos de movilidad extrema, porque nacida en México, primeros estudios en Estados Unidos, en Texas, luego movida a Alemania y haciendo el doctorado en Suecia, ¿no? Y que es un caso interesante y quizás nos pueda arrojar luz aplicando modelos de redes sociales para entender esto. Entonces, sin más, empezamos con la presentación de Cecilia y es un gusto tenerte aquí. Y como le hemos pedido que haga la presentación en inglés, pues para que todo el mundo sea, pero bueno, como veis, habla español mejor que nosotros y con mejor música.
So I'll switch to English now. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's quite an honor to be here. And I hope this will be interesting for you. So today I'm going to talk about collaboration networks and how they matter for scientific talent retention. And I provide evidence from the German universities. So I guess that introduction was enough. So I'll just keep that. This paper is in co-authorship with some colleagues of mine at the Fraunhofer. That's Maria Karaulova, Henning Kroll, and Torben Schubert. That's also my, as in Germany, they call it doctor father. So today I'm gonna explore the question, how does a university collaboration network associate with its ability to retain scientific talent? But first, in order to answer this question, I want to ask, why do institutional collaboration networks matter in the first place? So that's just a really short recap of everything that I'm going to say, and then I'll go more into detail. But they matter because the structures of collaboration networks, they mirror structures of prestige hierarchies. Yeah. So more central positions mean institutional prestige. And different institutional prestige relate to differences in academic success. This has been already evident in literature. So more central positions mean better academic outcomes. So why do institutional networks, collaboration networks, matter for talent retention? Because the prestige hierarchies of collaboration networks shape the supply and demand of the academic labor market. So let's just start now and look more into detail to what I just said. So overall, what's institutional prestige? First of all, it's related to merit, and it's measured through meritocratic mechanisms. This usually is the number of publications, so top 10 number of publications of the world or number of citations. And we usually know the authoritative rankings that do that. So for instance, the Leiden ranking. But it has been evidenced in literature that there's a confounded nature, institutional prestige, that also relates to social status. So institutional prestige is both related to merit, but also to social status. So this relates to non-meritocratic mechanisms. That means social ties, working environment, demographic characteristics such as gender, influence also institutional prestige. And academic networks are the way to look into this aspect. So then we have the meritocratic mechanisms and the non-meritocratic mechanisms. On the left-hand side, we have the Leiden ranking as an example. And the right-hand side, we have, for instance, higher networks or collaboration networks that have been looked into, exploring this aspect of institutional prestige. Both have been shown that have structural hierarchies. So Leiden ranker usually shows structural hierarchies, but also the networks. And they both are associated with each other. And these are then related to institutional prestige. So right now I've established that academic networks exhibit hierarchical structures that relate to institutional prestige. So why study academic networks? Why are they important? Because they inform us the extent that academia operates on or departs from non-meritocratic principles. This means that prestige is also associated with social dynamics. These exceed individual merit. These also mirror the influence of social attributes on academic outcomes. So prestige hierarchies usually favor well-positioned individuals that are able to capitalize on mobility. These create power structures that intensify cumulative advantage. So in that sense, capital breeds capital. This creates disparities in capital. And it has been evidenced that disparities in capital mediate scientific attention, evaluation, and collaboration in science. And this shapes which scientific discoveries are made, their impact, but they also reflect social and epistemic inequalities in science. So now, why focusing from academic networks? Why focusing on collaboration networks? Because academic networks are just a measure to measure academic activity. So why focusing on collaboration as an aspect of academic activity? Because these collaboration networks have been already linked to prestige hierarchies that operate through key dynamics of the concept of social capital that was firstly introduced by the French sociologist Bourdieu. And this is mostly not noticeable because equivalent endowments of capital produce unequal returns. What does that mean? That your social ties condition your returns on capital. Why is that? Because social capital is a collective resource. It encompasses both actual and potential resources that are tied for belonging to a group. So in that sense, your position is a function itself, it functions as a resource. And in this sense, scientific legitimacy depends on the internal structure of social ties and of the scientific fields. And it has been already evidenced that central positions of collaboration networks are associated with better academic outcomes. And here I just want to bring some study that has already shown evidence that collaboration with researchers from prestigious academic environments amplifies their scientific productivity and their prominence. So basically their productivity and their prominence is driven by their collaboration partners. So in this sense, I propose that collaboration networks act as social capital. They provide a sensitive framework for identifying socially based non-meritocratic mechanisms and tracing their links to scientific outcomes. In this way, we can learn about the anchoring and steering effects of collaboration networks, which make collaboration choices outcome relevant. So now, how do we relate this to mobility? Well, we know that there's a downside of academic mobility, and it's the potential loss of talent for countries. We know that some countries train and export more researchers than they receive from other countries. In this sense, there's a global competition for talent. And then this creates incentives. Countries introduce incentives in order to balance the migration flow of researchers. Germany has shown a net outflow of researchers. In that sense, it has issues with rebalancing the trends that are essential for sustaining research capabilities. In that sense, the retention of researchers is extremely important for a country. What does that mean? The returnees are very important because they show, or there's evidence that shows that there's higher scientific productivity and prominence than non-mobile researchers. In Germany, it has also been shown that the median scientific age of returnees is higher than non-mobile researchers. This is an indication that there's differences in their levels of expertise. So now we've established why collaboration networks are important. Why are they particularly important for talent retention? Because institutional environments are relevant on how social capital translates into mobility. We know from evidence that faculty hiring occurs within networks, and institutional prestige influences the supply and demand of academic labor markets. And there's also evidence that there's a positive association between collaboration and returnees. So now to my research gap. There's current literature that does not explicitly explore the role of institutional position in the wider scientific network. This is a research shaping academic flows. There's a lack of understanding of the role of universities' collaboration networks, so the non-meritocratic mechanisms in the retention of scientific talent. So now we argue in our paper that a university's position in the collaboration network conditions the extent and the quality of social capital it can mobilize to retain talent. The more influential the position in a co-authorship network, it's a signal to a more prestigious environment, and the stronger its ability, a university's ability to leverage social capital, influencing mobility flows. So here are our hypotheses. The first one focuses on the higher the average eigenvector centrality of a university's researchers, the higher the university's share of returnees. Then we have two sub-hypotheses. We say that this effect will vary by source country, so where they come from, and the effect will also vary by the scientific age. Second hypothesis, we focus on the outgoers. So we say that the higher eigenvector centrality of a university will relate to a lower share of universities' outgoers. This effect, we say, will also vary by destination country, so where they go to, and that scientific age also plays a role in this differentiation. So now to my data. I use a panel data with 53 German universities that are also listed in the Leiden ranking, and 3 fields. I use a time frame from 2011 to 2022. I use publication data, mostly scientific articles from Scopus. And I have the data for the global science network for this period, which comprises around 17 million authors, and which have these main field compositions that are defined by Scopus. So 7 distinct fields, where you can see that around 39% of the authors lie in the natural sciences field. The second biggest field is engineering and technology, medical and health sciences, and then it comes to agricultural sciences with 6% of the authors, social sciences with around 8%, and humanities 3%, and the rest. there's around 23 million publications, where from this data set, Germany has around 300,000 authors and 1 million publications. I also use data from the ETER database, which is the university level data that I have. This is for European higher education data. So now to my dependent variable. I focus on publishing authors who had at least one mobility occurrence in relation to Germany. I focus on mobility categories that I base them on their main country of affiliation. So my main dependent variable is the returnees. These are authors who published in Germany, they left, and they returned as a share of all university researchers in a specific field. So for instance, here there's an author that, let's say, it doesn't matter where it started, but here in this example, this author started in Austria, then moved to Germany, then moved to the US, and then returned to Germany. And since I focus on the university, so in the institution level, I would take the university that was able to pull them back as the let's say as the data, like for instance here, it was Austria, it was University A, then it was the US, but then University B was able to attract back this research. So that's the university that gets the data point. Then the outgoers are simply authors who published in Germany before, left, and did not return as a chair of a university's researchers in a specific field. This would be someone, for instance, that goes to the US, then goes out to Germany, and goes out, was in Germany, sorry, and goes out from Germany. And then the outgoing institution would be the one that we linked to this mobility flow. The incomers, I just add them because I was adding them in the regression just to compare, even though it's not one of my main dependent variables. But these are authors who published outside Germany, moved, and stayed in Germany. These are as a share of university researchers in field J. And yes, someone that, for instance, came from Mexico, came to Germany, and that respective university would be the one that was able to attract them.
Sorry, can I ask a clarification question?
Yeah.
How do you build the denominator in the previous slide? Because it's a hair, no?
Yes.
So all university researchers in field J, but in which year relative to the year of the movement of the main?
So I have it for the chair of researchers that are in that university, in that field for that year. And then the movement is the researchers incoming. So yeah, I know there's like a yeah, but it's the researchers that income during a certain field and to that university for that year also. So
okay.
I think I'll clarify better in the next slide.
Okay.
Main country of affiliation, we do 4 steps. First one is country where the author published most frequently for a given year. This was around 96% of the authors, so quite good. And if this was not possible, we looked at if an author published the same number of publications in different countries, then the main country from the previous publication year is chosen. This was then around 2.8% of the authors, and for the rest is less than 2%. So I can just go over it if anyone has more questions later. So a little bit of descriptives on my dependent variable. Here I categorize the mobility by type and source, destination, country. So here first we see the incomers, and you see the top 20 countries where they come to Germany. You see it's very small, so I guess I'll read it out a little bit. You see mostly they come from the United States, the UK, and Switzerland. Then the returnees, mostly same US, UK, Switzerland, and outgoers, US, Switzerland, and UK. But here you will see it in the next slide, but overall you see in the very small numbers that there's a net outflow of researchers. Then here you have the mobility over time and by type of mobility and country. And also we did some country grouping here. I just want to show here how the incoming and the outgoing have a similar trend. And then you see the disruption of COVID in the last years. But usually see that there's more mobility from the EU in general, and also the global south appears to be an interesting element to focus. But overall, you see they have somehow similar patterns, although you can still see the net outflow of researchers. And the returnees, they're a little bit, the trend is a little bit more stable over time, although you can still see the COVID effect. But interestingly, you see that the US is rather at the top compared to incoming and outgoing. And the second interesting group is the EU, of course. So here I just want to compare the returnees to outgoers. It is a ratio by country group and scientific age. Here you see the career stage on the left-hand side, and here you see the country groups. And you see that when it's red, it's because there's more outgoing flows, and as it gets green, it's more returnees. So then you see that overall, there's a net outflow of researchers, and this continues like with the early career researchers, but as the early career stage progresses, then we have more returnees. So then you see, for instance, if these three first countries have a similar pattern, so the US, Canada, and the UK, where they have more seniors, middle career researchers also coming back. And then these others have way less of the middle career researchers returning. But also overall, we see more seniors tend to return. So now to my main independent variable. Here, how is it constructed? So I have the global research network for 3 distinct fields. I do aggregate collaborations for, I will take this example for 2022, is the collaborations that happen in year 22, 21, and 2020. That is because we assume connections do not immediately disappear, so we want the connections to be a little more stable. We focus on the publications of all authors who have published more than once in the selected fields, and with publications with 10 or less authors in order to capture collaboration a bit better, because as you add more authors, then collaboration gets a little bit more blurred. Then we focus from this into the Germany scientific network. So we focus on the university level, but this is better explained here. So here, this is the global network. Let's say it's field of natural sciences. We take all the authors that have ever published and collaborated in natural sciences field, and then we take this, let's say, subgraph that it's related to all the authors that have ever published with Germany. We're able to say, for instance, this author belongs to this university. And all of these authors belong to University C. They all have a network measure. So for instance, this author has a degree centrality of, I don't know, 7, and then the other has another degree centrality. And for this University C, we take the average. That's why we're able to do conclusions at the university level. We do it only for Germany because we have very clean data on the universities, and we're able to say this author belongs to this university, but for the rest of the world it's quite complicated. So That's why we focused on Germany. And so that's, I hope that was clear. If not, please let me know, because it's one of the most central points to understand.
Just one clarification.
Yes.
When you mean degree of centrality is within Germany, right?
Within the university. So basically, you have a network measure per author to the author level, and then I average it to the university that is able to give me a university level measure. So it's like an aggregation method through averaging. I've also tried with the quantiles. So it's a way to jump like from the author level to the university level. Yes.
The centrality at the individual level is based on the network of co-authors?
Yes, exactly. So basically the analysis is done at the author level, and then you're able to see the connections around this author, and then we do it, then the average to be able to say this university has this average level of connections per author. So yeah, I hope that's clear. Okay. I hope I didn't confuse you by saying centrality, because my main focus is the eigenvector centrality. Why? Because this influence, it's a measure for the influence of a node. So the influence a university has on a scientific field. This is basically a measure of influence based on the connections to other influential people. This reflects the ability to leverage on social capital and accumulation of capital through the connection through influential academics in a field. And eigenvector centrality has been found to be positively correlated with the Leiden rankings. So it also shows prestige hierarchies. And it allows the identification of disparities in social capital that result in prestige hierarchies shaping scientific outcomes. And then here, I was trying to play around and see how correlated it is to the Leiden ranking performance. Here you see it's moderately correlated, but still can tell us that it has some sort of ranking. So this correlation tells us it's important who is first, who's later. And here's a combination of our dependent variable, and then I looked also how it is ranked by the Leiden performance. And then as you can see up there, this is the returnees versus outgoers. And you can see that the institutions that have on the left-hand side better Leiden ranking, they are also getting more returnees. And then you see as the Leiden performance score reduces, they're also less returnees. And the same with the flows, you see that there's more outgoers, as I've said, I mentioned before. So these are my other explanatory variables. Yeah, I will not go very much in detail, but if anyone has more questions, I'll come back to them. Just briefly mentioning the most important would be I also control for the number of connections, so that in order to see if it's really truly the influence or just it's more like quantity versus quality of connections. And I also include the Crown indicator, which is the field normalized citation rate, and the field publication share. These are just to control also for the meritocratic mechanisms. So this is my model specification. So on the left-hand side, you have mobility. That is the share of mobile researchers of University I in field J at year T. Then we have returnees and outgoers. And on the right-hand side, you have eigencentrality. That's the average eigenvector centrality of University I in field J and year T. As I mentioned before, I focus on the 58 internationally recognized German universities in 3 scientific fields that are natural sciences, agricultural sciences, and social sciences. This is a university field effects regression, and it controls for university year level, but also university field year level. And I also added the time trend, which has a COVID break in order to absorb the shock that you saw in the descriptives. So now to my results. Here's the different mobility types on the eigencentrality. You see that for the incoming is not significant. For the outgoers, you see that it's more the connections that count, and this influences their share of outgoing researchers. Whilst for the returnee, it does influence the eigenvector centrality, which is the influence that the influence that the university has is able to attract more returnees. Then I was exploring on the different countries. As you can see, there's no effect for the returnees coming from Switzerland, but there's an effect for the outgoers. This could be an indication, and especially for only for the senior, so it can be an indication that there's more prestige environments in Switzerland compared to Germany, and that's why seniors go there. And then we have the EU. Overall, there's a positive relationship with all of the group, but if you then disentangle it with scientific age, you see that it's mostly the early career researchers that drive this result. So you see that there's early career researchers returning to German universities, and there's no significance for the outgoers. Then we do this the same for the US. We see that the middle, it plays around the middle scientific age. So we have more returnees, and the universities play a bigger role there, while we don't see that for the outgoers. Then we do this for Austria, also because it's a German-speaking country, so to explore this effect. We see that also early career researchers are more likely to return, and then there's no effect for the outgoers. Then we did this for the Global South, and you also see that there's more returnees, more senior returnees. So they're, yeah. And then there's no effect for the outgoers. So overall, we provide evidence for hypothesis 1, which was just to remind you that the higher the university average eigenvector centrality, the higher a university share of returnees. We find also supporting evidence for the H 1.1 and 1.2, and universities with higher average eigenvector associate with more returnees. From EU overall, we see that, and also with early career researchers. From the US, especially the middle career researchers. From Austria, especially the early career researchers, and from the Global South, which are the senior career researchers. We find no supporting evidence for H2, which was related to the outgoers. However, we see there's an effect for Switzerland, where more senior researchers live. We also see that for outgoers, degree centrality plays a larger role. So not the quality, but the quantity of connections you have. So overall, to summarize, the more influential a university's position in the co-authorship network, the stronger its ability to leverage social capital influencing mobility flows. This signals the presence of prestige hierarchies in collaboration networks. This conditions the extent and the quality of social capital it can mobilize to retain talent. We find evidence of German universities leveraging their positional resource to retain talent, although its extent is conditioned on the prestigiousness of other academic environments that could be more prestige. For instance, the case with Switzerland. We see that patterns vary by scientific age. We see seniors are able to capitalize on their expertise, and they're able to choose the more prestigious environments. We see middle career researchers returning from the US, signaling universities' positional advantage. German universities benefit from EU mobility in the return of early career researchers. These also results point to disparities in global science, as it was seen with the global south losing the more senior researchers. So overall, German's university influential position does not play a role for outgoers, except for Switzerland. However, the connectivity to others, perhaps more prestigious, because we're not able to see if they're more prestigious, but we hypothesize that, that they enable the mobility outflow. So overall, and to summarize everything, by unevenly distributing social capital, prestige hierarchies associate with collaboration networks. This shapes career opportunities structures with measurable effects on universities' talent retention. And just to conclude, a very nice phrase from one of the papers, that we provide evidence that knowledge flows and power are structurally intertwined. And that's it.
Muy bien. ¿Preguntas o clarificaciones?